All right, thanks for coming to the third workshop that we've had set up for these, commercialization of cannabis. Tonight we'll cover the legislative history of cannabis in Maine. I can go over a little bit more um, for Ellsworth. And then Tina's here to help with the election process. We have a sample ballot that will show and where the question concerning the adult use stores is located, what the wording is. And then I'll go into some potential licensing, what other municipalities do and what Ellsworth is likely to consider when drafting the ordinances. All right, so here's a short history of recent legislation for cannabis in Maine. So, in 2009, possession of 2.5 ounces or less of marijuana was decriminalized. It was made a civil infraction. That's really the first major legislation in recent history. There have been additional laws passed, like in the 70s, there was one, I believe. A few are later on than that, but in recent history, 2009 was the most recent date. In 2016, there was a ballot initiative that proposed statewide legalization of marijuana use and sale. The initiative passed in the affirmative, with retail sales set to begin in 2018. Within the initial law, municipalities had to vote to opt out of cannabis sales. They were automatically opted in. However, due to a veto process, and so after that, in 2019, the legislature reversed the automatic opt-in and made it opt out, the default for municipalities. So that was reversed. And then also, because of a veto process and COVID-19, it delayed the actual implementation of sales until 2020. So this is still fairly recent activity in Maine. It's only, again, 4 years old where sales have really been in implementation. And we're still seeing the economic effects of that and also some social effects. So we'll get to the ballot question. The question is, shall the city of Ellsworth vote to authorize within the municipality the operation of adult use cannabis stores, provide they operate in compliance with all applicable state and local requirements? A yes vote, so these are two notes that are below the question itself. A yes vote means the city council will authorize the city planning department to begin drafting ordinances and regulations to allow for adult use cannabis stores within the city of Ellsworth. Then a no vote means no further action will be taken to introduce adult use cannabis stores within the city of Ellsworth at this time. So let me escape this, stop sharing, and I'll share this sample ballot. So I'll zoom in a little bit. Figure out how to make this work best. Sorry, there's the obnoxious sample things across it so that if I send this to people, they can't print it and say it's the actual ballot. But so there's your standard ballot, essentially. For most part, the blocks here are labeled. This will be where the city council candidates are, the Ellsworth Library trustees, and the school board. But then on the right side here, it's the simple yes or no vote with the label adult use recreational cannabis stores. And then the question is presented here with the notes directly below it before the voter votes. And so, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, yes or no vote. There's an explanation of what they'll be voting on. Again, I'll try to have a information sheet to go with the ballot, kind of describing what we've gone over in these workshops and what this type of use could look like within the city, the allowed zones, mostly the planning and land use side of it. But just so people have information when they make the actual vote, in case they're not aware of what these stores are. I think most people are, but again, just in case, I'll share more information on election day with an information sheet. And I'll probably present it in a pro cons type of style, so that way, both the yes and the no are represented. It's not an information sheet that someone might do that's favoring one way or the other. try and make it as neutral as possible. And it's just the normal ballot again at the bottom. So not too different. So if this question wasn't present, the ballot would probably look exactly like this, just maybe this would be up here as a third column instead. But
That's exactly what it would be.
so
So that would have moved up.
So not too, the way the council voted to do this, it's not as complicated as I initially thought it was going to be. Or there were going to be essentially 8 uses up for ballot referendum, but they limited it to 1 new use, and so it's much more straightforward. And then do you have any more comments on just kind of the election process and how it could flow?
No, you're doing perfect. So, we had some discussion on whether this question should be on the front of the ballot or if it should be on the back. So, but I think it was decided that the question should be on the front, so voters obviously don't miss the question that's on the back. Sometimes a reversed ballot can be confusing to voters. So if everything's all on the front page, I think it's a lot more visible for everybody to see. So, and the information sheet will be sent out in absentee ballots also to all voters, if they request an absentee. I just wrote that down for you.
Right.
You're welcome. Do you guys have any questions on that process?
Slideshow back up. Then let's get the potential licensing. So licensing for these types of facilities could follow and likely will follow a similar process to businesses that sell alcohol, requiring both a local and state approval. There's the Office of Cannabis Policy that works with the businesses on a state level, and the local municipality can require additional licensing. Again, like we do for alcohol. So council would vote to approve this license on an annual basis. So just like other business licenses for lodging and for alcohol, it would have to have approvals from varying city departments. So code enforcement and police would be vetted to make sure there's no civil infractions or criminal infractions or, it's a criminal nuisance. From the police's perspective, where they're getting a lot of calls to a certain business, the tax collector would have to sign off saying they have paid all their taxes and are up to date. And the state clerk's office would also have to say that they paid their licensing fee and that everything is ready to go prior to council making the vote. And we do that again for businesses already, so it would just be a similar process for these new businesses. There would be an annual licensing fee, similar to what other cities have for these uses. These fees are very much across the board and all over the map for different cities. I've included some examples, or Bangor, which does not have much of a limit at all, I don't believe, on cannabis retail stores, and they only charge $316 per year. However, you have other municipalities where the number is much more limited. So Sanford charges $22,500 a year for their license. South Portland charges $1,400 a year. Portland charges $10,000 a year. And so these fees are all over the place. I imagine Ellsworth being somewhere in the middle between these. But so typically the fewer stores allowed in the municipality, the higher the licensing fee is because it's more sought after. And there's economy of scale. And so just talking about the fee a little bit more, depending on what the council wants in terms of total number of facilities or stores, again, that'll likely impact the fee pretty heavily, and what other restrictions or requests the city makes upon the businesses. So if the city requires a developer to improve a vacant lot and add to the tax base, there's a potential that to offset that new construction or the new building or improving an old building, the licensing fee may be lower for the initial year that it's in business, but then it may go up to a higher fee in the following years just because they are spending extra money on the city in terms of rehab or new construction. So that's something that could be tossed around, but then just for what we currently have, our current medical cannabis licensing fee for the one dispensary in town is $1,000 per year plus some additional charges, so it comes out to roughly $1,115 per year. I would think that the adult use may be a little higher than that fee, but it'll be up to what the council discusses. um, Especially for a for-profit company where the medical dispensary is technically a nonprofit. I think that's all I have for that. I'll go back. Just our next workshop is October 10th, 5:30 to 6:30. It's an open listening session for citizens. For comments, questions, and concerns. I may turn this into more of a workshop with the council and the planning board to kind of review the other topics we've covered in these workshops and get them to say kind of what they're thinking and their thoughts are, so voters have an idea prior to going to the ballot. But I'll keep the citizenry updated on that. That's a month away, so probably next week I'll have made a decision to see if I can get enough of the council or planning board to attend that meeting date. Do we have any questions about the licensing process, the ballot process? Or if you're really interested in the legislative history? Ray, I know you have some thoughts on the fee
Well,
itself.
I basically think that it's three step or four step. So first is got to be, which you discussed last week, what the land use ordinance is going to require. And I think that should be very, very detailed about what's required. I mentioned some of my thoughts on that, but I think 2,000 feet from school, but some of the same land use stuff, I think, should also be in the licensing requirements, especially the distances, and that's licensing will be set up so that as the city council approves of it, not as a lot of the licenses the city clerk's office can approve of it, the basic
Right.
and no non-controversial things. And and 2,000 feet from school, actually, if I looked at the state statute and the library, and I don't think there's anything in that would keep us from the city from having certain distances for churches, libraries, and also other establishments which sell medical marijuana, or from, say, if the city decides to allow 2 or 3 commercial marijuana facilities from other commercial marijuana, there should be a substantial distance between those and liquor and tobacco and the like. And limit of hours, this state minimum opening and closing times, but you can do anything between that. And I think basically it should be, a basic, I thought it'd just be an 8-hour day, 9 to 5. But that's a decision. But fees, what I found is interesting set of fees, and also depending how many the city decides to allow, what there's going to be, how the city, what procedure they're going to take to determine who gets chosen, whether there's going to be a lottery as Kittery, Maine has done, or whether there's some other criteria that the city council can delve into itself, and which might be better. But and as far as fees are concerned, as you say, they're all over the place. Kittery had I don't know what they call it, but it was an initial fee, processing type fee of $750. Then everyone who got that got into the lottery. Of course, they had an awful lot of people applying.
Right.
But so I'm thinking there should be an initial processing fee, and I don't think it's unreasonable to have it be $750, because depending what, and this would be for getting a license, any previous fee for getting approvals from the land use ordinance, those would be separate fees, and which would have to be paid to, or whatever, for that provision should go to the planning board, and also it should be, I don't know what they call it, major use or whatever, so the planning board has to delve into it closely.
So that would be, I think we covered it a little bit.
Yeah. And then, the initial processing fee, and then I'm thinking there should be just another a set of fees for whoever is ultimately chosen by the city for whether it's one or more than one. I think at most it should be allowed as one, it's my own personal opinion, but anything, but whoever gets that, there should be, I don't know, I call it a qualification fee. And I think that should be, I think that's the fee that should be substantial the first time around. Make sure you have someone that's going to be coming in and is going to be able to do it initially. And then, and I'm thinking maybe that should be the fee that's in the 20 to 25,000 range. And then you have the annual licensing fee, which, I'm thinking maybe, I just don't know. Kittery set up to 6,000, you've shown what, you have up here, Sanford 22.5 for that, and Portland 10, so I don't know. Anywhere in that range, 2,500 to 6 or 10,000 for an annual fee would be good. And then if something happens, and if the annual fee down the second year or down the road, 3, 4, 5 years, if the person who's had the license isn't in a position to renew, and then you have to get another one, that gets you back to starting the whole thing over again. So initially, do it all over again. So
I think for the licensing, figuring out who would receive it, I feel like an RFP process, whether it's tied to a certain piece of property or just seeing who, someone creating a proposal of what their store would look like, the store design, the feel of it, like the character for where they would like to build it, would be the best process.
there is a provision in the statute that have to be an ordinance for no off-premise sales can be allowed. But I basically think those of you take the view that should be no off-premise sales, and so basically to get the council license, they have to first get a conditional license from the state. That's in the state statute.
Yes.
And then, then state line, make sure all city land use things are done first, and then all other municipal things, the 3 required, whatever the city clerk requires, whatever the fire, police, and I think, in drafting the ordinance, you can come up with requirements that maybe you're even stiffer.
Yeah.
Than what might be required for someone getting a liquor license.
Potentially,
I think that can be justified, and also, no person of business should have more than one license, so if you have a person that has this use license, well, this is all that's going to be allowed, but they can't have, I'm thinking if the city decides to allow more than one license, they can't have 2 of them in different parts of the city, that's one license, so that's some of my thoughts.
now, for your opinion, if like provider like Curaleaf wanted to expand into retail, do you think they should be allowed to do medical and retail, or just stick to one of those?
Just stick to one. And also, oh yes, this is one other thing which I've noticed, there's language in the statute that allows commercial use marijuana to sell some other things, but I can't figure out whether they're allowed to sell liquor products. I don't think they should be, so I think that's got to be determined what the state thinks on that, and then if there's any way to do it, the city should not have them selling alcohol products. And I think, I don't know, the only place I have never been in it, but I think from reading about it when they set it up a couple of years ago, I think that was, I don't know, I don't think in Southwest Harbor that in the cannabis store they can sell alcohol items.
I don't think they would be able to. I mean, there would be two different licenses and
Yeah.
probably put too much pressure on one
Yeah.
facility to sell both. So like again, Southwest Harbor, I think there's a dividing wall between
Yes,
liquor
yes,
store and
yes,
the
yeah,
liquor store.
they're-
I mean, it's in the same
they're
building, I
separate.
guess, technically.
there's- yeah. Either the same building, but they're well
Different
separated,
store.
or maybe arguably they might be in separate units of a
Right.
mall type bit, of a mall type operation.
Right. So that's technically a different store. So I think
Yes,
that's why.
yes. Yeah. Although if you have, it's one of my other crazy suggestions, if you have 1,000 to 2,000 feet between separating cannabis, commercial use cannabis from alcohol provider or medical marijuana or anything else, that gets you probably in separate buildings, or if not in a separate unit of a mall or some of them, it's in the same building, it's has to be, some amount of feet away.
Right, you'll have your cannabis shop, place to get snacks, and then liquor store on the other side. Any other questions, comments? Kind of like to hear what you guys are going through in Mariahville. With this so far.
Well, we've been approached.
Oh,
We've been approached, and I'm just curious how Ellsworth's gonna
Yeah.
come with what they're gonna come up with, and, because we're gonna be approached again.
so you're just in a learning phase right now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we've been in touch with the state about the opt-in and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious what Ellsworth is gonna do.
I know.
Yeah,
We're curious too.
and with all the interest that showed up at these meetings, I think it's probably just gonna pass right through.
Yeah,
Or it's gonna fail,
I was gonna
fail
say-
or pass, one or the other.
it was a close vote in 2016 in Ellsworth. For it ultimately was a no vote in Ellsworth for whether or not the state should legalize cannabis. It was close. I think it was only a few percentage points away from one another. The demographics have shifted here since 2016 pretty significantly, so I don't know.
Interesting.
Any other questions? No? All right, well, like I said, I'll keep you guys updated. We'll probably do a couple advertisements if I can get the workshop scheduled for October 10th to be a council and planning board joint workshop. If not, I'll still keep it as the open listening session, and try and get some comments and questions turned in. But give people the option to turn them in digitally too ahead of time, so if people can't attend the meeting, they can ask questions. Kind of a survey out there, people, so. If nobody shows up, or if it's just a small group, I'll just be reading through those questions and answering them on Zoom, recording it, but, yeah. So if you do think of anything else, let me know, and I'll include it in the next session. Thanks, everybody.
October 7th.